Let's talk about something most people overlook. Yet it quietly shapes their mindset, their energy, and their destiny, their environment. The world around you is not neutral. It reflects what's happening inside you. Every object you own, every space you occupy, and every detail in your daily surroundings is an extension of your psychological state. You might think your room is just a place to sleep, your bed just a tool for rest. But the truth is far deeper. The way you treat your environment, especially the most intimate part of it, your bed, is a mirror of the way you treat your mind and your life. Think about it. You spend roughly a third of your life in that space. It's where you retreat when you're exhausted, when you're hurt, when you need clarity or escape. It's where your body repairs itself and your subconscious processes your entire day. That means the energy of that space, the order or disorder of it, plays a direct role in how you recover and rebuild your inner world. You cannot live a clear, intentional, purpose-driven life while your environment whispers chaos into your subconscious every night. You might not consciously hear it, but it's there. That pile of unfolded clothes, that buzzing phone, that laptop blinking notifications, all murmuring messages of distraction, incompletion, and mental noise. Your surroundings speak a language your nervous system understands perfectly, even when your rational mind tries to ignore it. A cluttered environment signals that you've lost control, that you're overwhelmed, that you're stuck in loops you haven't closed. And your brain responds accordingly. It becomes restless. It loses focus. It begins to mirror the same disorder you see around you. But a clean, orderly space tells a different story. One of discipline, control, and respect. It tells your mind, you're in charge here. It calms your thoughts, sharpens your focus, and invites peace. This isn't just about aesthetics or comfort. It's about the connection between order and meaning. When you create order in your external world, you send a message to your internal world that life can be managed, that chaos can be tamed. Every time you make your bed, clear your space, or remove something that doesn't belong, you are performing a symbolic act of reclaiming agency. You're reminding yourself that even in a chaotic world, you can still establish harmony within your reach. That sense of order becomes contagious. It spreads into how you think, how you plan, how you show up for yourself and others. Now, most people underestimate this because they assume that big transformations come from big actions. They wait for breakthroughs, new opportunities, or life-changing events. But transformation often starts small, with a single act of responsibility. Cleaning space might not seem spiritual or profound, but it's deeply psychological. When you take charge of your immediate environment, you're teaching your brain that you have the power to bring structure where there was disorder, light where there was dullness. And over time, that translates into how you handle challenges, relationships, and even your destiny. The truth is, the objects in your environment are not just objects. They carry meaning, memory, and emotion. The jacket draped across the chair might remind you of a time you felt unprepared. The unopened mail might symbolize avoidance. The clutter might represent things you've postponed, decisions you've delayed, emotions you haven't processed. When you live surrounded by those symbols, your mind doesn't rest. It loops through those stories over and over again, even as you sleep. That's why your environment must align with the energy you want to live in. And nowhere is this more important than in your bed. The place where your conscious mind releases control and your subconscious takes over. That's sacred ground, whether you realize it or not. What you allow in that space determines how deeply you rest and how clearly you wake. Your bed is where your dreams form, where your mind reconfigures itself, where your energy renews. Yet many people treat it as a dumping ground for distraction and delay. They scroll their phones until sleep takes over, responding to the world's noise instead of preparing their spirit for stillness. They pile clothes, gadgets, and remnants of their day onto their bed, unaware that every item carries a vibration that interacts with their energy while they rest. This isn't mystical thinking, it's psychological reality. Your brain associates environments with behavior. If your bed is where you work, eat, and scroll endlessly, your mind no longer associates it with rest. You'll find yourself lying there, exhausted, but unable to switch off. That's because your environment has blurred boundaries. The sacred space meant for restoration has become a place of overstimulation. You wake up tired, not because your body didn't rest, but because your spirit didn't. To truly rest, you must reestablish boundaries. The bed should be a space of purity, not perfection, but purpose. It's a place where you teach your body and mind to let go, to surrender, to renewal. When you remove distractions, when you clear that space, you're not just cleaning, you're consecrating, you're declaring that your rest matters, that your peace is worth protecting. That declaration builds self-respect, and self-respect builds momentum. And this extends far beyond the physical act. The deeper lesson is about stewardship. The principle that what you manage well multiplies. If you can't manage the small space you sleep in, how can you manage the vast potential of your life? That's not criticism, it's truth. Every great transformation begins with stewardship over the immediate. When you discipline your environment, you discipline your mind. You teach yourself that you can create order, even in the smallest domain. That belief, when practiced consistently, expands into every area of life. Now, some might say, it's just a bed, it doesn't matter. But it does, because habits compound both in chaos and in order. The state of your bed is often a reflection of the state of your thoughts. Disorder in one area invites disorder in others. But when you establish order, even in something as simple as where you sleep, you set a foundation for clarity. It's not about the blanket, the pillows, or the sheets. It's about the principle of respecting the space that renews you. If you think deeply about it, the bed is a metaphor for your mind. It's where everything settles after the noise of the day. It's the field on which your soul recovers from battle. And just as you wouldn't plant seeds in polluted soil, you shouldn't rest in a polluted environment. Purify the space and you purify the rest. Protect it and you protect your energy, because the quality of your sleep determines the quality of your thoughts, and your thoughts shape the quality of your life. The tragedy is that most people chase peace externally through achievements, recognition, or wealth, yet overlook the small, tangible places where peace begins. It doesn't start in the big moments. It starts in how you care for what's within arm's reach. The universe meets you where discipline and intention align. And if you can bring order to your bed, your personal sanctuary, you begin to attract clarity and calm in ways that ripple outward into every part of your existence. You might notice that the more you honor that space, the more your mornings feel lighter, your mind clearer, your decisions more intentional. That's not coincidence, it's alignment. When your environment reflects peace, your inner world starts to echo it. The space you rest in becomes a quiet teacher, whispering lessons of structure, self-worth, and serenity. And that's where we begin to see the connection between physical order and spiritual flow. How protecting your sacred space becomes the foundation for protecting your destiny. Because when you learn to honor the small spaces, you prepare yourself to handle the larger ones with wisdom, gratitude, and strength. Clutter is never just about mess. It's a reflection of an internal dialogue that has gone unanswered for too long. Every object lying where it shouldn't, every unfinished task staring back at you from the corner of your room is a conversation between you and your own indecision. It's not random, it's symbolic. People often underestimate how deeply the physical reflects the psychological. But if you look closely, the outer world always reveals the structure of the inner one. The bed, for instance, that sacred space of rest and renewal, when it becomes cluttered, it begins to speak for the parts of you that are burdened, unresolved, or unwilling to confront certain truths. When you see clutter, you're looking at a physical manifestation of avoidance. Those piles of clothes, they're the postponed decisions, that stack of papers, the fear of failure, or the pressure of responsibility. The half-empty water bottles, the scattered objects, they're the tiny evidence of fragmented attention. And here's the deeper truth. When you live surrounded by things that represent what you have not completed, your mind never truly rests. It remains tethered to those small reminders of unfinished business. The mind recognizes them as open loops, unresolved tasks that constantly consume background energy, like too many apps running on a phone that's overheating. You might not consciously think about them, but your nervous system does. It feels the tension of disorder. There's something profoundly psychological about how we interact with chaos. A cluttered environment creates the illusion that life is too complex to manage. It whispers lies, that you're too busy, too tired, too overwhelmed to take control. But the irony is, it's the act of bringing order to that chaos that starts to dismantle the very overwhelm it created. When you choose to confront clutter, you're not merely organizing objects, you're confronting hesitation itself. You're taking what has been ignored and saying, I see you, you don't control me anymore. That simple act becomes an assertion of responsibility. And responsibility is the path to meaning. That's why clutter isn't just an inconvenience, it's a teacher. It reveals where you've avoided ownership. It shows you what you're unwilling to face. And here's something to consider. The parts of your environment that are most disordered often correspond to the areas of your life where you feel least in control. A disorganized workspace mirrors confusion in purpose. A messy bedroom mirrors unrest in the soul. The external world and the internal world operate in unison, constantly mirroring each other. When you begin to put one in order, the other naturally begins to follow. This is why the process of cleaning your space can be so emotional for some people. You're not just moving items, you're shifting energy, releasing attachments, rewriting internal scripts. You might pick up an old shirt and suddenly remember a relationship that ended years ago, or find a letter that reignites feelings you thought you'd forgotten. That's because clutter often carries emotional residue. It's memory made physical. So when you finally decide to declutter, you're not just removing objects. You're choosing to stop carrying unnecessary emotional weight. You're choosing to make space for new energy, for clarity, for growth. But let's take this further, beyond the physical, beyond the visible. Think about what happens when you walk into a clean room. The air feels different. Your shoulders drop. Your breathing slows. You feel grounded. Why? Because order is not merely visual, it's psychological regulation. When the environment around you is structured, your mind perceives safety. It interprets order as competence. It says, the world is under control, at least within this boundary. That gives you permission to focus, to rest, to create. And when we apply this principle to the bed, that intimate territory of rest and vulnerability, the effect multiplies. The bed is where you disarm yourself. It's the one place where you can't pretend. If that space becomes cluttered, it silently erodes your peace. It tells your nervous system that even in the place designed for rest, there is still unfinished business waiting for you. You may lie down physically, but mentally you remain on guard. You drift between sleep and stress, unable to fully surrender because your environment signals that there is still something undone. Now imagine the opposite. A bed free from distraction. Sheets smooth, pillows aligned, no piles, no devices. The space breathes simplicity. That visual clarity translates directly into mental clarity. Your body senses it, your thoughts slow, you give yourself permission to rest deeply without subconscious interruptions. The symbolism of that cannot be overstated, because in that act, you're communicating to yourself and to the world that you are worthy of peace. You are capable of creating order. You respect your own boundaries. And that brings us to the concept of clear space inviting clarity. It's almost self-evident, but few people grasp its depth. When you remove what doesn't belong, you make room for what does. This isn't just spatial, it's existential. Life can't give you new blessings if your environment, both internal and external, is still occupied by old ones that have outlived their purpose. The universe, or fate, or whatever you believe orders the chaos of existence, seems to respond most strongly to readiness. And readiness looks like clarity, a space that says, I've made room. Think about how plants grow. They can't thrive in overcrowded soil. The roots need space, air, and light. The same applies to you. When your environment is cluttered, your potential suffocates. But the moment you clear that space, you create a vacuum. And nature abhors a vacuum. Something new will always flow into the space you've opened. It might be an idea, a sense of peace, a burst of motivation, or an unexpected opportunity, but that only happens when you first do the work of removal. And it's not just physical removal, it's the discipline of constant renewal, the daily habit of choosing order. Because clarity is not something you achieve once, it's something you maintain. Every day you decide whether to invite peace or tolerate chaos. Every morning your bed tells you what kind of person you are becoming. Are you someone who allows clutter to accumulate? Physical, mental, emotional. Or someone who continually reclaims clarity, no matter how small the action seems? There's a deep psychological satisfaction in maintaining a clear space. It affirms your competence. It tells you that you can manage your world. Even if that world starts as just the four corners of your bed, from that sense of control, confidence emerges. And confidence breeds direction. It becomes a self-reinforcing loop. Order generating strength, strength generating more order. That's how transformation works. It's not magic, it's mastery, one decision at a time. And the interesting thing about clear space is that it doesn't just influence how you feel, it influences how you think. Studies have shown that when people operate in clean, uncluttered environments, they make decisions faster, they procrastinate less, and their creativity increases. Why? Because the mind loves structure. It thrives in environments that reflect coherence. When your surroundings are clear, your thoughts align. You begin to think in straight lines rather than spirals. You notice possibilities where before you only saw confusion. It's as if the external clarity becomes an internal compass, guiding you toward the next step in your evolution. You start to understand that order is not restrictive, it's liberating. It frees up mental bandwidth to focus on what truly matters: purpose, growth, contribution. You realize that chaos was never a sign of freedom, it was a sign of fragmentation. Freedom, real freedom, comes from discipline. The discipline to keep your world in order so your mind can explore the unknown without being dragged down by what you've neglected. So the call here is not simply to clean your bed or declutter your room, it's to recognize that the process itself is sacred. You're shaping not just a space, but a state of being. Every time you clear, you align. Every time you remove, you make room for something higher to enter. You're training yourself to live intentionally, to value clarity as the foundation for everything else that follows, including the blessings waiting for the moment you finally make room for them to arrive. Imagine for a moment that your environment, your room, your bed, the very space you occupy every day is a reflection of your inner architecture. Every detail mirrors a thought, a habit, a belief about who you are and what you deserve. Now consider what happens when that space becomes clear, ordered, intentional. You begin to see things differently. The fog lifts. That's not coincidence. It's a psychological and spiritual response to order. When you clear physical space, you simultaneously create mental space. And mental space is where vision, creativity, and peace begin to grow. This is what it means when we say that clean spaces invite clarity. It's not just about being neat, it's about creating an external order that resonates with your internal potential. People underestimate how much their environment teaches their mind what to expect from life. If you live in clutter, your brain adapts to chaos. It begins to normalize confusion and distraction. You stop noticing it because you've been training your perception to accept noise as reality. But when you start clearing that noise, even in small steps, your mind notices. It recognizes the shift. Suddenly, the silence feels heavier, but in a good way, because silence creates space for reflection, and reflection gives birth to understanding. That's where insight lives. When you walk into a clean, uncluttered space, something profound happens. Your mind becomes lighter. You start breathing differently. You stand taller. And that's not just sensory, it's symbolic. It's as if your environment is saying, look, this is who you could be, centered, focused, capable. And that changes how you behave. You begin to approach your life with more intentionality because your environment mirrors possibility rather than limitation. It's fascinating how much your surroundings shape your sense of identity. You cannot separate yourself from the context you live in. The state of your environment constantly communicates messages to your subconscious. A messy bed whispers that there's always something unfinished, while an ordered space quietly tells you that you are capable of creating harmony, even when everything else feels uncertain. The small act of clearing your bed before sleep might seem insignificant, but it's symbolic discipline. It's the daily ritual of reclaiming control from entropy, the natural tendency of everything to decay into disorder. That act, repeated consistently, rewires your brain. You start associating peace with structure. You begin to expect clarity, not chaos, from your surroundings, and soon from your relationships, your work, and your future. That expectation changes the standard you live by. And as your standard rises, so does your energy. People don't often realize that energy doesn't come from motivation, it comes from momentum. Every small decision to put something in order fuels that momentum. It tells your subconscious mind that progress is possible, that improvement is achievable. And this brings us to a deeper idea, that discipline in small things builds destiny. People dream of success, of freedom, of living meaningful lives, but few understand that the road to those things is paved with invisible habits. It's not what you do once in a while that shapes your life, it's what you do consistently, especially when no one is watching. The discipline of maintaining order, of protecting your environment, of saying no to distraction and yes to purpose, that's where the foundation of destiny is laid. Think of it like this. If you cannot command the smallest territory you occupy, your bed, your desk, your personal space, how can you possibly manage the vast complexities of your future? Responsibility grows in proportion to mastery. You must first demonstrate to yourself that you can maintain what you already have before life entrusts you with more. That's not punishment, it's preparation. Life doesn't reward wishful thinking, it rewards stewardship. It gives more to those who manage what they already possess with care and precision. When you wake up each morning and see your bed made, your environment orderly, it tells your mind, I am capable of order. That thought becomes a seed. Over time, it grows into a tree of discipline. And that discipline bears fruit in every other area of your life. You begin to speak differently, act differently, think differently. You stop tolerating chaos in your environment, in your relationships, and in your habits. You start seeing clutter not as harmless, but as resistance, as something that stands between you and your higher potential. That's the beauty of discipline. It's contagious. It starts in one corner of your life and spreads. What begins as cleaning your space becomes setting boundaries, managing time, making decisions with intention. You start saying no to what drains you because you've learned the value of protecting peace. You begin to understand that the small things, the ones no one praises you for, are the true training ground for greatness. You can see this principle reflected everywhere in nature. A tree does not grow tall because it chases the sky. It grows because it establishes deep roots, silent, unseen, disciplined roots that hold it steady through storms. Discipline is the same. It's invisible work that holds your life steady when pressure comes. People often admire those who appear composed and successful, but what they rarely see is the structure beneath. The daily habits, the consistent order, the quiet refusal to let chaos rule. And this extends beyond personal discipline. It becomes moral and spiritual discipline. The recognition that how you handle small responsibilities is a reflection of your readiness for greater ones. If you can't respect your resting space, how will you respect your purpose? If you can't bring order to your immediate environment, how will you bring order to the world around you? You start to see that discipline isn't about restriction, it's about expansion. It gives you the structure you need to contain and channel your potential. Without structure, potential leaks away into distraction and regret. There's something profoundly sacred about taking responsibility for your immediate world. It's as though you are entering a partnership with the divine order of the universe itself, aligning your will with creation, choosing to participate in the constant act of bringing chaos into form. Every time you organize your space, every time you choose intention over neglect, you're playing a small but significant role in that cosmic order. That's why the feeling of peace you experience afterward feels spiritual, because it is. You participated, even in a humble way, in restoring harmony to the world. When you start living this way, you stop waiting for motivation. You begin acting out of principle. You clean your space not because you feel like it, but because it's the right thing to do. Because order is good, and good things create ripple effects. You learn to take pride not in the grand gestures, but in the quiet consistencies. You understand that the discipline of order builds integrity, and integrity attracts opportunity. And that's when you realize something else, that blessings are not random. They're not accidents or strokes of luck. They are responses to readiness. When you create order, when you protect your peace, when you show that you can handle responsibility with care, life begins to open doors that were previously closed. The right opportunities seem to appear at the right time, but they were always there. You just couldn't see them through the clutter. Clarity brings vision. Vision invites purpose. Purpose fuels growth, and growth, real, lasting growth, requires discipline. Not the kind that enslaves you, but the kind that liberates you from the smallness of disorder. You start realizing that freedom is not the absence of structure, it's the mastery of it. Because when you have mastered the small areas of your life, when you've learned to bring harmony to your space, your mind, and your habits, you gain the strength to take on the greater responsibilities that life inevitably demands. So yes, clear your space, protect your bed, treat your environment as sacred ground. But understand that the deeper lesson is about who you are becoming in the process. Every act of discipline is a declaration of identity. You're saying, I am someone who brings order. I am someone who values peace. I am someone who is ready for more. And that readiness doesn't just change your environment, it changes the trajectory of your entire life.